Hi, welcome to my $20 garden. I want to give you my 5 top tips for you to start a garden on the cheap, just like I did. Tip number 1, grow in ground. I know that raised beds are all the rage right now, and if there's a reason or a need or a desire for you to have a raised garden bed, absolutely go for it. But my number 1 top tip is grow in the ground. If you have ground, it's free. You don't need to buy any of the things to frame out the bed. You don't need to buy any soil to go in the raised bed. The ground is automatically going to be to hold on to water better, so you're not going to have to pay for as much water to do your irrigating. Grow in the ground. 12 months ago, this was lawn. We covered it up, sort of a lasagna style, put down some cardboard over the lawn, put a bunch of horse manure down over the top of that, some dirt from another part of the yard on top of that, and then some mulch on the top. And it was done. We started planting into it last year, right after we finished making it. So tip number 1 for starting a garden on the cheap, grow in the ground. Tip number 2, direct seed plants right into your garden beds. All of these, this is 2 different kinds of endive, and then there's some leeks back here. These were all seeds put directly in the dirt. These I actually put in the fall, and these I put in the early spring. You do not have to start seedlings in your house. You don't have to buy potting soil. You don't have to buy seed trays. You don't have to buy lights to start them off. Put your seeds in the ground. You can generally get packets of seeds very inexpensively, normally for the price of 1 or 2 plants. So especially for plants that you're going to want a lot of, lettuces being a great example of that. But one $2 pack of seeds is going to keep you in lettuce all year. Just put them straight in the ground, and you don't have to do any extra work or spend any extra money buying plug trays or starting seedlings yourself. Just put them in the ground. Tip number 3, use free stuff. All the free stuff. Be obnoxious and ask for free stuff. You would be shocked with the amount of things that other people consider waste products that they have to pay money to get rid of. And if you take it for free, they're thrilled because then they don't have to pay money to dump it someplace. You can also use free stuff you already have. So all of these beds here are what's called a hugelkultur style. There is rotting wood under every single one of these beds, big logs that we just pull out of our woods that were rotting and decaying, and then a bunch of sticks and stuff that we have to pick up before we can mow our lawn anyway. And we just put those on top, and then you put the soil on top of that. The idea is the wood rots down, it absorbs water and holds on to water, so you don't have to pay for water as much. And it slowly releases nutrients as they break down, so you don't have to pay for fertilizer. So those were things that we already had, but on top of that, we put horse manure. I just Googled horse barn near me and started making phone calls and said, hey, do you want to get rid of a big pile of horse manure? Do you have to take that someplace to dump it? I'd love it if you could come and dump that at my house and save yourself the dump fee. And the very first one I called came the same day to dump a literal dump truck of horse manure. That's a lot of good dirt. And so we topped everything, every single bed with free horse manure. And we have a lot of beds. We have about 30 of these big beds that are that. I also keep an eye out on Facebook Marketplace for free stuff. All of this hay, which makes great mulch for keeping the weeds out when you pile it on super thick, especially over winter. Somebody had a bunch of spoiled hay that they were giving away for free. On the side of the road, come get it if you want it. And I did, so I've got all of that. Don't be afraid to be obnoxious. Polite. There was a local place that it was the very end of the season last year for orchard trees, like apple trees and peach trees. The trees were looking really pathetic. They've been sitting out since spring. They were looking real droopy and awful. They're not going to sell these trees in November. So I just said, hey, if you give them to me 90% off, I'll take all 30 of them. So now we have a 30 tree fruit orchard. And it wasn't exactly free, but it was like $10 for a 30 tree fruit orchard. So don't be afraid to use free stuff. You can call local coffee shops to get coffee grounds, local breweries to get their spent grain. I make the little tags for what I've planted, just write with a Sharpie on some rocks, or these are broken slate tiles, and set them so you know where you planted things. Use sticks to make dividers between the different things that you're planting, so you know this one is this thing and this one is this thing. Nothing has to be expensive and nothing has to be fancy. Everything's going to break eventually, so why not start with a free thing that then will be very easy to replace, especially if it's a free thing that will break down and feed your soil. Tip number 4, build community. I know this may seem a little bit of a stretch for top tips for starting a garden on the cheap. However, gardeners love to share. They love to share plants, they love to share seeds, they love to share knowledge and information. They sometimes even love to share garden chores. Make friends and get connected with your local community of gardeners in your area. This fire pit is right on the edge of our garden, and it is almost 100% filled with things that we got from our community. Most of them were free or very inexpensive, and a lot of them we shared other things back with the people that shared them with us. A buy nothing group would be a great option if you have something like that in your area. Something similar, maybe Free Cycle, or even the Facebook Marketplace. The basic idea is if you have things you don't need, you offer them up for free for somebody who does need them. And then when other people in your community are offering things up that they don't need and you can use them, then you get them. So that is how we got all of the bricks, both different types of the bricks for this. It was somebody who needed help getting rid of the brick pad that was in their yard, and they didn't want the bricks. So we went and helped them dig them up, and then we got to bring all the bricks home. The metal fire ring in the middle was another thing that people just didn't want. Our little stove that we use to boil water for outdoor cooking kind of things is 2 car tires welded that we got done by a local mechanic who we give our business to. The bulbs that we got were from a neighbor who had lots of extras that they didn't need. And then there's 2 little mint plants as well that we have taken cuttings off of to share with other people. So build community. Plants are free and multiply on their own accord in a lot of cases. If you share with other people, they will share with you. So not only is it a great way to get gardening things for free, it's also fun and just nice. It makes gardening more enjoyable to have other friends who like to garden and swap plants. Tip number 5 for starting a garden on the cheap is to change your mindset. If you've ever heard the expression, use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without, that is the perfect philosophy for cheaply gardening. Use it up. If you have material available to you, like let's say sticks that fell down out of the trees in your yard, you can turn that into a trellis for your pea plants. If you have a sprinkler already, you don't need to go buy a different kind of sprinkler. You can use that one. If you have a watering can and no sprinkler, you can do it with the watering can. You can change the way you think about what you need to do a garden. There are a lot of gardening supply companies that spend a lot of money trying to convince you that you need a lot of physical things to be able to garden. And you can change your mindset and not have those things. The only things that you really need to grow a plant is the plant, some dirt, and sunlight, and a way to get some water to it sometimes. Depending on where you live, rain might even be enough for that. You do not need fancy gizmos. A shovel can be helpful, but honestly, when I forget my shovel or can't be bothered to go get it and I just need to plant a little seedling or something, you can just grab a big stick and poke a hole. That's a dibber. You don't need to purchase fancy things to do a lot of gardening. We do not have an extensive gardening tool collection. We've got a wheelbarrow and a shovel, and that's what basically the tools that we use to do our garden. So I hope you found this useful and entertaining, and it inspired you to go out and plant something. All of my tips are just my experiences and what I think works well. There is nothing wrong with doing a hobby in the way that you enjoy it. So if you prefer to do any of these things in a different way, that is totally fine. You should absolutely do what works for you. But if you desperately want to garden but don't have a budget or choose not to use your budget on gardening supplies, we have a garden large enough to feed our family of 4, and it truly did not cost me more than $20 worth of materials to get it started. So get out and get growing.